Assalamu alaikum everyone. So today we are going to be looking at the impacts of decisions on stakeholders. Now there are lots of decisions that businesses take and they have some impacts on stakeholders because that's what the basic definition of stakeholders were, that people, individuals or groups of individuals who can be directly or indirectly affected by business actions or decisions. So they are interested in that. So we're going to be looking at a few couple of examples of decisions that the business take and what impact does that have on stakeholders. So I'll start off with expansion. Now expansion generally means like expanding your business, increasing the number of outlets, increasing the size of the factory, and stuff like that. So what are the effects of that this might have on stakeholders? So here are a couple of stakeholders that we have and the effects that it causes. So, owner, what is the effect of expansion on owner? Well, the owner may need to fund the investment, but the reward of more sales should outweigh the cost. Market share might also increase, allowing more benefits to owner. So, the basic idea behind expansion is that when for owner, of course, he needs to fund the investment for the expansion. But of course, he will be rewarded with the sales. If expansion is success, then there will be a greater number of sales, and hence that cost that the owner had, the funds that he invested should be recovered. And market share will also increase. And if market share increases, we have already talked about all the benefits of market share in a different video, so check that out if you want. Now, employees are likely to make current employees. Now the expansion what expansion causes is that it is likely to make current employees feel more secure. Some may even be promoted to supervisors or higher ranks to monitor the new coming employees. So that's employees benefit a lot from expansion. So they are happy with it. They feel more secure that okay, the business is growing more. Our salaries might also increase, and they may even get promoted if they have been working hard. So as new employees might be coming, the existing ones that are good, that have been working for a long time, they might be promoted to higher rank, supervise the new employees. So employees overall benefit from expansion. Now what happens to consumers? Well, when when a business expands, our scale of operations increase, and we've already discussed that when scale of operations increase, we generally get economies of scale, which leads to lower average cost. And if our cost is low, that means that there will be lower average price to consumers. That also depends business to business. Not all business reduces price, but if you are in a competitive environment and you are competing on price factors, so a smart business who has economies of scale, if they have already expanded, then their cost is reduced, so they can lower the prices to retain the same amount of profit, but instead get more sales revenue. Or extra investment could be made in the business, which may be recouped with higher prices instead. That's a negative impact of expansion, that if you have made extra investment and that is making your cash flow go negative, or you are not able to recover the cost that has been utilized in the expansion, then you might increase the prices to consumers. Or say, let's say the business has grown, so it has a better name now, it has a better brand now, so that's why they might charge higher in prices now, because they are a better business, they have a better name, a bigger name. So that could also be the second situation that might happen. Now, local community, there could be more noise pollution or factory discharge because of expansion. If the business has expanded, if it works with some energy production businesses like coal, energy production from coals, burning of coals, so that could cause more factory discharge. Or noise pollution if there's a lot of transportation going by. But there will also be better infrastructure facilities like roads and electricity, and even employment opportunities will be provided to local community. So local community will also benefit if they make this compromise. Now shareholders, this point is only applicable for of course public limited companies or in private limited companies. Like, what are the benefits that the shareholders have of those businesses? Well, they might be asked to invest more to fund the expansion. Of course, you are expanding, the owner also invested, so the shareholders also supposed to invest in the expansion. So there will be increased cost for expansion, which may mean lower dividends. Of course, the cost has increased, because they have invested in the business, then they will have lower dividends. But in the long run, they may get better dividends. Why? Well, in the long run, the business sales will increase, profits will increase, and if profits increase, then that means that their dividends will also be increased. So shareholders will overall benefit as well. Now let's move on to the second point, making employees redundant. Before starting off this decision, we are first going to discuss about what redundant means. Basically, if if certain employees are not needed in the business anymore, such as the business is closing one factory or closing a certain operation, so all the employees associated with that particular factory or that particular section will need to be fired because they're no longer needed. So you can't just fire them because of the contract that you have. So instead you pay them some money, a few months salary for that, and you just say, okay, you're no longer needed, take the salary and go find some other job. So that's what basically redundancy is. We're going to be discussing more about this in HRM chapter, but for now that's just a basic idea that about redundancy. Now, what are the effects on stakeholders other than employees? Of course, of redundancy, employees will of course be have a negative. The existing employees that are left, they might think that they are also in danger and that they might also become redundant. So they might themselves leave the business. They might be labor turnover. They might leave business and find some other jobs. And if your competitors get those employees that you made redundant, so the employees may be skilled and the competitors will have already skilled employees. So the competition will be tough, and hence that could have a negative effect on the business. So let's move on to the other stakeholders, customers. Now there are two types of businesses. Of course, there's a business who provides services, and there's a business which provides products. So if there's a service business, a business which provides services like hotels or management, something like which provides, let's say, tickets to, which deals with internet stuff, technology stuff, social media stuff, and hotels and what banking services. So there could be a worse service leading to a poor experience. Why? Because employees are the one who are dealing with customer directly. So if the already existing employees that were experienced or had considerable experience, they are being made redundant, that means that there are fewer employees left to deal with customers, and customers might have worse service, which leads to poor experience, and they might shift to different different businesses that are your competitors. Or there's also a good side of it, that better products might be available to customers if the business shifted to capital intensive. What this point means is that if your business was working in a labor intensive business and you had more capital, you invested in capital, you made your employees redundant and instead went with capital intensive business, then since there's technology, there's less chances of error, and because of that, it might mean your products are better now, so customers will benefit from that. Now, owners may have less profits as they are high redundancy costs. They may eventually have higher profits as the business is more efficient, even though there will be less profits at first because of the redundancy costs, because of the salaries that you have to give to the business, to the employees which you have fired, which you have made redundant. But eventually there will be higher profits as the business becomes more efficient. But that will not always be the case. Sometimes it is, sometimes that's not the case. Local community, there will be increased unemployment and lower average income, so that's a disadvantage over there. Government, of course, there's also be increased unemployment, so they will have lower income tax revenue. Shareholders, the dividends may decrease because of the extra redundancy costs, leading to a lower income for the shareholders and a chance that they will want to sell shares as well. So overall, making employees redundant is not too good for most of the stakeholders, and a business might be forced to, because of the stakeholder pressure, that they might be forced to not make this decision. So it will only be made in a very critical situation. Moving on, the next decision is introduction of JIT inventory management. Just in time inventory management is basically that you order the stocks only when a customer comes to you and they place your order. They place an order, so after they place an order, then you place an order to your supplier to to give you the stocks. Because of that, this method, you don't need warehouses to stock up your inventory, and you don't have to worry about outdated goods, nor you have to overstock, understock. There's no such thing. So your warehouses could be used for some other purposes. Now, benefits? What are the impacts of stakeholders of this method? Introduction of this method. Suppliers first. Suppliers are the one who are affected the most, of course, because GIT will mean frequent orders, which is likely to increase the cost of suppliers, and they may even be reluctant to agree to GIT and hence need to change suppliers. The business needs to change suppliers. So, since you are using GIT, suppose your customers are coming daily, you are having daily customers, so we will order your stocks daily, and that means there are more delivery costs to the supplier. They might be reluctant to agree to it because of the, if it's not too much profitable for supplier, if it's becoming too much costly for them, then they might not agree to the GIT proposal, and the business might be forced to change suppliers. And a change in supplier might mean a change in quality of the business, the products that they provide. Change in quality could be better or worse, but that depends on the cost as well. If the chip supplier is cheap, but the quality of the products is not good, then customers won't be satisfied. But if the suppliers is good enough, the quality is good, but the cost, it will also be costly, so that might be not too good for shareholders. Owners owners could require significant investment in this method. They may also be savings to be made on warehouses that are no longer needed. So even though you have to invest a lot for GIT method for the supplier agreement and all, but the warehouses that were already in use, that they are no longer needed, so they can be used for some other purposes, or they can be sold, so you can make some savings from that warehouse as well. Employees may be made redundant if they work in the warehouse. So since if they work in the warehouse in the maintenance of stocks, the warehouse no longer is needed, so the employees will also no longer be needed. So that could be a problem. But instead of making those employees redundant, a business could change their job to distribution rather than warehouse, if it's possible, of course. Customers may have to customers may have to wait longer, which could make the customers have to order from somewhere else. Hence, customers may be lost. So, suppose customers place an order, but before you already had stocks with you, so you just treated your customers directly at that time, but now they have to wait for the order to come, wait for the suppliers to come, and because of that, customers won't be satisfied too much, and they might order from some other businesses if they are in urgent need of that particular order that they ordered. So your customers can be lost from this method. But generally, it's overall effective in your inventory management, that you don't have to overstock or understock your stocks. So that's a benefit. Now that we've discussed about the decisions, impact of the decisions on stakeholders, let's just discuss a small other topic that has not been discussed yet in this video. It was CSR. CSR. Yeah. Remember we discussed earlier about CSR. Now we would talk about that. The stakeholder concept is that businesses should have CSR as their objectives. So stakeholders, they force the businesses that they should consider the interest of society and take responsibility for the impact of the decision and activities. Because of that, business are generally forced to have CSR as their objective. So there's a conflict between stakeholders and shareholders because of this CSR objective. So conflicts also arise between, when you are making a decision, there will always be a conflict between your stakeholder groups. So you have to make a compromise. You have to prioritize one stakeholder group over another and consider what is the best option for businesses. Such as CSR might be costly for the business and will cause dissatisfaction to shareholders, but in the long run, the shareholders will also have a good dividends. The overall, your customers, your stakeholders will also be happy with you, and you won't lose customers. Instead, you will be more publicly famous, and you might even gain more customers if you have a socially responsible image. So that's about the basic idea, that yeah, there are conflicts and you have to make compromises one way or another to prioritize one stakeholder group over another. So that's all. Thanks for watching. Office.